I'm someone who had lived up in the mountains all my life. I actually had my own place and I absolutely loved to be here. I never really paid too much attention to folklore or anything like that because, well, I'd never seen anything, so why would I believe it? Living up in these mountains can be good and bad, but honestly, it's like your own planet here. You cannot see anybody at all, and I mean that unless you choose so, which is good, but it can be pretty dangerous at the same time too. I didn't have any immediate neighbours. I'd have to get in my truck and drive for quite a while to actually see them, which is fine, because I don't mind being on my own up here. I know there's some people that can drive insane, but for me, I liked it. Now, I lived in some beautiful forest area too, where that I didn't have to go too far to get away from people even further. I really wouldn't see anybody when I walked on these trails, not only because of the fact that it was winter, but it was cold, like really cold, so you always had to bring a really nice coat with you. Now, I'm not from North America like most of the people on here, so sorry if I get any of my English wrong, but I'd like to share my story of what happened one day. Now, it's something that I can't really put my finger on even now trying to think of it. It was about 2 years ago and I've decided that finally I should share my story with everyone. So, it was one of those days that I needed to go on a hike just to get out of my house. And also, there had been reports of some people hanging around in the forest and I wanted to investigate. Just out of plain curiosity reasons. There was no reason for me to go down there, I mean honestly, but I just wanted to have a look around and see what was occurring. So I head out. Now, as I head out, I have my warm clothes with me and my torches and everything, and even some supplies in a backpack, just in case I got hungry. When you walk in the snow like this, it's normal for you to feel quite tired and for your legs to feel kind of like a burn. It's something I got used to though because I'd lived up here for so long and it didn't put me off my adventure. I wasn't actually expecting to find anyone, so I have no issues. Now it is very cold while I start walking, and when I first come out of my truck I'm actually hesitant about if I actually want to go or not, but I think if I'm a true mountain person then it shouldn't affect me, so I head off down the first path. Now on this first path there's a really nice road and there's pretty cool trees on either side of me. They're very skinny obviously because it being winter and they don't have any leaves, and it means you can actually see quite far. Not miles but decently, so you know if anybody else is out here. I decided that for today I wanted to wear some bright blue clothing because I want to stand out a bit from the background, and I don't know, if there was any possibility, as small as it might be, that I'd get lost, I wanted people to be able to recognise me easily amongst the background. Now, I didn't have to make it too far in before things got weird. I remembered pretty much immediately hearing some kind of screechy sound. And you know what I did? I laughed. Clearly someone out here was trying to play a game with me, or with each other. It almost sounded like the thing was on a tape recording, so I wasn't really bothered, and I continue on my walk. I think if anything comes, I am armed too, so I'm not afraid to take it out. So yeah, it's just me against the world pretty much, so I feel fairly confident. I continue on my walk down this trail, and the trees seem to get a bit taller now. They look absolutely beautiful like they always do, and I felt quite proud to actually live where I do. Not a lot of people get to experience things like this, and I feel like I was very grateful to God for being able to. I even get to see some lights in the sky sometimes because I'm so far away from people. You get a really good view of the stars and everything. I've even been able to see a number of shooting stars because of this, and again, it's something I liked. Now while walking, I come closer and closer to a big clearing up ahead, and this is the way that I want to walk. Now, I had a warm feeling while walking. I don't know why, I just felt like an inner peace. Now, I didn't get too much further down when I realised that the shrieking sounds have stopped. Yeah, it sounds really unreal. Not like anything that you'd worry about if you knew what it was, but still disturbing if you didn't. However, I wasn't worried at all. I just thought there were some idiots that got drunk out here and thought, oh yeah, let me play some games. Some of the local people here do things like that because, well, I don't know, they probably just get bored or something. I wasn't one of them, but I wasn't gonna let them take advantage of me, so I thought, well, what if I make them jump? Wouldn't that be funny? Now, it never crossed my mind that this might actually be a crazy person and that maybe I'll fight to the death, but hey, I guess you kind of get those thoughts in hindsight. So I continue down this path and eventually make it to a more structured area that actually has quite a nice little walkway and stairs that go down. Now, to be honest, I don't actually know how this thing stayed structurally sound. The wood it was built on was pretty good, but they never maintained it. I think that's one problem with places like this, is they only ever do some work in the summer, but it's never enough. If this thing had fell, I would have gone quite a long way down with it. I'm pretty sure some of the branches from the trees would have cut into the sides of me, and it wouldn't have been a good day if that had happened. But luckily it holds up my weight, and I needed to lose some, to be honest, so I was actually a little bit concerned about this happening. I eventually make it a bit further in, and I can hear a different sound now. This one's more like a moan than it is an actual squeak. Almost like something needs help, like a sympathy one. Now, you ain't gonna get no sympathy from me, so I shouted out, still thinking there were these idiots out here trying to mess with me, and it wasn't gonna work. Now, there wasn't really any animals that I had to be worried about, so again, I felt fairly confident now. Now, I wasn't stupid. I wasn't going miles away from people and getting myself lost out here. I was just following the trails that I knew so well and felt comfortable in. And every so often I'd pass a little tag on the trees that made me recognise that I was going the right way. I don't know how recently they put them up here, but I knew I was still on the trail. Now, the scenery was really lovely. There was about 5 or 6 inches of snow on either side of me. I could see it because on some of the wooden railings it kind of stood above the ground, and it just made me feel quite happy to be where I was. There weren't any footsteps, so I knew it was me alone here and it felt good. I'd even slide my way through pretending that I was skiing, but I realised it wasn't a great job to do that because my socks were going to suffer if water got in. Now, I actually had frostbite before on my toes and it wasn't a nice experience. I remembered when I was a kid that I made some little den thing and I just left my feet in there and kind of relaxed. I wasn't doing anything. Now, eventually part of it fell on my feet, but I couldn't be bothered to move. I couldn't really feel my toes, so I thought that was just because of the cold, but I didn't realise that part of my shoe had torn and snow was already on my feet. So when I got in, obviously I had some form of frostbite and my mother took me to the hospital quickly and they were able to sort me out. But it wasn't something I wanted to experience again. If you injure your feet in places out this, then you're kind of in real trouble, because yeah, you can go on, but you're going to sacrifice your feet and you can't really crawl, because it's going to be incredibly slow, and secondly, you're going to get really cold, so I was ever so cautious of it and kind of cut it out. Weirdly, the further I was going, the less confident I was feeling. Usually I'm somebody who doesn't really fear much of anything, but now I've got to tell you, for whatever reason that was fading. Let's say it started out at about 90% and had dropped down to probably 30 or 40, which is very low for my standards. Again, I'm not letting this put me off, and I kind of have my ego take over and I say, you know what, I'm just going to keep going. I call out, hey, I need to come and meet you and your friends. Let's play hide and seek as a joke. I hear what almost sounds like laughter, but more of an animalistic sound. And again, I don't know what these people are doing. There was definitely people in here with me. I could just sense their presence, but my confidence was going down now. I decide that it's probably best if I don't stay out here too late because I don't actually know what's out here and I don't want to be stuck here in the dark with whatever they are. The other thing is, if I have to hide, it's going to be a pretty hard job with my coat on. I do have a couple of camouflage coats which are more like hunters' ones, but in this particular moment I don't have that. I've just got my old blue one, and I'm going to stand out like there's no tomorrow, and I don't want to take off my coat to hide because obviously that would be stupid. I make it up to another one of the trail markers and I start to feel more normal again. As I'm waiting here, I hear a sound much closer now. It sounds like branches snapping off the side of the trail that I'm on. Now what's weird about this is that it would be really difficult for a person to walk there, and God knows how heavy they would have to be to actually snap like that. I mean, I know if I run and threw myself in it might make that sound, but not consistently, and that's the first thing that I think's a little odd. I noticed too that my vision's gone a little bit blurry now, and it takes a second and I realise that something's walked past ahead of me. Now I was convinced that my eyes were just watering for a second, but it wasn't. So someone wearing a white coat was up ahead and I think, I've got you now. So I actually jog a bit. Weirdly I can see movement now, but up on the opposite side, which is bizarre, so there must be two people, because there's no way anybody moved that quick up there. I would hear kind of like a deep breathing too every so often. It was like somebody was trying their best to stay still but just could not control their diaphragm, and that's why I was hearing things. Again, I think this is pretty odd, and I do have my weapon with me, so I'm not scared. But I decided that it's probably not such a good idea to be playing games with these kids, because finally, after God knows how long, I know it's probably too long, I start to feel quite anxious. I decide it's best if I head back now, and I begin to turn around. That's when I hear a scream sound again, but much closer. I look out and I can just about make out some kind of eyes staring up at me, just from the ridgeline. This is weird. I can tell that they're wearing some kind of Halloween costume, and they kind of look like a monkey but like more white coloured. They have these big jagged teeth, and I think, God, this is actually quite creepy now. At least they're warm in that thing. I actually started to make animal sounds back to them now. I know you're probably thinking this is stupid, and I bet it looked really weird from a distance. Yeah, so I did that. I thought it would make them move, and I start to charge towards them. I say something silly along the lines of, I'm the mountain man and you're the prey. I know this probably wouldn't have been good, because if it was anybody scared or lost, then it wouldn't hold up good in court, would it? I'm the mountain man and you're the prey. But I wasn't thinking like that at the time. My confidence was coming back to my head, and yeah, I should probably tell you that that fearlessness was immediately fading. As I get closer, this thing looks almost too real. It quickly darts off again, but not at the speed that a human couldn't match, so I don't think much of it. I just think, God, there's some right weirdos out here, and I decide that I should just head back more hastily now. Because of all my energy expenditure, I've actually become really hungry suddenly, and I just want to get back home now. It's not like I was getting home too much anyway, because I wasn't working at the time because of the season. I actually work as a logger, but I could tell you a few stories about that quickly before I go on. Being a logger, there's times of the year that we can't actually work because A, it's too dangerous and the conditions don't allow it. I guess one weird thing that had actually happened to us is that one of my friends was working one of the machines when suddenly he just stops and turns back to me and says, something's wrong here, I can feel it. Not 2 seconds later, one of the machines sets on fire, and there was actually a massive fire that eventually spread to the logs we had cut. We eventually made it out of here, and my friend starts crying, and I say, what's wrong? He says, I had a dream that we died here in this fire. Yeah, it's pretty weird. I don't know whether he was psychic or anything, or if maybe a spirit had come to warn him, but that was definitely weird. It kind of unsettled me quite a lot, To be honest, more than I want to admit. But yeah, like I was saying, I worked as a logger and not much was on, so going home would just basically be reading or something, and I didn't really want to. But anyway, with the current circumstances, boredom should be the least of my issues, so I just continue on my way. That's when I get the first instinct that something's definitely off now. I could hear that sound crashing through the trees next to me. I can't really see anything, but again, it's through parts of the woods that are far too thick to be going through if you're a normal person not on the trail. And it almost felt like the ground shaked a little bit when this person was moving. Now, I couldn't see them clearly, it was almost like a blur out of the side of my vision. I don't know what you guys call it, but you know when you can just see out of the side of your eye. So I decided to pick up a jog now. I think that I can probably outlast whatever this thing is running, and I've probably jogged for about 10 minutes straight. Now in those conditions that was actually a mammoth challenge, and I'm barely able to do so. I stopped to catch my breath and I realise there's movement again, and I hear a screech again. This one is much louder, and now I realise something is definitely off. There's no way any person could have run through the woods like that parallel to me at that pace for that long. I mean literally, there's no way that it should be possible. How on earth would they have got through the trees and all the twigs and other stuff laying around without making that much noise, but not on a path? I was barely able to do it myself, being quite a quick person and relatively athletic, but they did it next to me the whole time. And this clearly wasn't a person playing a game now. I feel a little bit better because where this thing is running is clearly off quite a big cliff, so now they have quite a challenge to get back up to where I am, so I feel a little bit more confident. However, something in the back of my mind is just telling me that this whole situation is off and that I really need to try and get out of here. So I decide that there's not much else I can do now, and just start walking back. I realise that where I'm walking's got a nice little path again, and I can follow this up. But I wasn't sure what thing was following me. That's when something's off. The bridge thing that I was standing on now kind of collapsed up ahead of me, and suddenly reality set in. For a second I lock eyes with God knows what this thing is, but this ape-type creature covered in white fur, kind of looking dusty almost, is staring at me with these horrible teeth grueling. It lets out the scream sound again, and I realise this is no person playing games with me. I suddenly feel very scared, and without thinking I quickly dart under a tree and try and fortify my position and quickly kick some snow up ahead of me. I'm kind of hidden now in the bushes, and I take a moment to try and calm my breath and be as still and quiet as possible. I kid you not, I saw what looks like what I can only describe as a yeti sprint past, stop for a moment and start to smell. I dared breathe and I probably held my breath for about 30 seconds straight. This thing then goes exactly to where I was standing before with crashing sounds. I let out a slow sigh of relief as I let the air leave my body again when I hear the screech even louder. I now hear other screeches similar, and I'm pretty sure there was more than one of this thing. I don't know what to do now because obviously I'm not going to stay very warm in my current position, but what on God's earth is that thing? I really don't know what that could possibly have been. It sounds exactly like the things that I've heard about in our folklore, but they're not real. This can't be real. I keep telling myself over and over again in my head that this cannot be real. This entire situation is simply impossible. And I wait. I waited for so long that I begin to really shiver heavily, and I have no sign of whatever that thing is. I realise now that I have to step out and start moving again just to stay warm. Now I'm not joking, the second my head leaves the clearing, I hear it scream again just further away now, and I hear some sounds advancing towards me. I start sprinting, I'm not that far from safety now, but I can hear that thing coming. That's the worst part of it. The whole time that I was running, I can hear this thing chasing me, and I can't see it. I don't even think about the weapon that I have, just something clicked in my head. Some kind of calculation took place to make me remember that there's no way I can fight off whatever this is. I jog and jog until eventually I make it back towards where my car is. I quickly fumble for the keys and drop them. I punch my car in anger and that sets off the car alarm. And then I glance behind myself and I see it again. Those teeth, but it was like the second it had heard that alarm, it scared it, and it turns and starts sprinting off out of sight. I quickly get my keys and unlock my car, jumping in it, and I drove out and immediately skid a bit and have to slam onto the brakes. I've gone off the side of the road, but I quickly slam it into reverse and get back on again. It's incredibly dangerous conditions to drive in, and I might die if I'm not careful, so I've managed to calm myself for a few seconds. I look around and all I can hear is some wind chill and the sounds of some snow falling off of a tree not too far away. Now I eventually compose myself enough to drive and eventually make it back home. I ended up writing down everything that happened. I'm old-fashioned, so I wrote it with pen and paper, but it was almost like a therapy for me. I have never been to that area again, and I actually moved in with my family afterwards for a couple of months. I never told them what had happened, but I didn't think anyone would believe me. I want to share my story with you all because I don't know what happened those years ago. It just seems odd and something that I can't describe, and that really scares me.